Welcome everybody. Thanks so much for coming today. Please turn off or silence your cell phones so there's no interruptions. This event and the store and these authors are supported by books, so if you hear something you like today and you want to support them in the store, we'd be very happy if you bought one of their books, and Jason and David would be more than happy to sign them for you. Tonight we have Jason Chin and David Macaulay. Jason Chin is a celebrated author and illustrator of children's books. He is a winner of the Caldecott Medal for his illustrations in Andrea Wang's Watercress, a Newbery Honor book, and APALA Award winner. And with author Lynn Brunelle, the Sibert Medal for Life After Whale, the amazing ecosystem of a whale fall. I read that, it's very cool. His book Grand Canyon was awarded a Caldecott Honor, a Sibert Honor, and the NCTE Orbis Pictus Award. His other acclaimed nonfiction titles, including Coral Reefs, Redwoods, Gravity, Island, A Story of the Galapagos, Your Place in the Universe, and The Universe in You, have received numerous star reviews and other accolades. He lives in Vermont with his wife and children. And David Macaulay has been creating books since 1973. Cathedral, his first book, began to take shape a couple of years after graduating from Rhode Island School of Design with a degree in architecture. Since then, a total of 35 books have emerged from the chaos, and many of them have been translated into a variety of languages. His sketches and illustrations have been exhibited across the United States, in Europe, and in both China and South Korea. He has been blessed with many awards, including a Caldecott Medal and, more recently, a McArthur Fellowship, although he freely admits he is not a genius. Without further ado, Jason and David.
Hey, David.
Hey, Jason. You'll soon discover that we're really very likable people, even though there's a slight difference in our ages. So anyway, this is maybe the second time that I have actually met Jason in person, face to face, handshake. We may have met when he was working at Books of Wonder in New York, and I was having copies. I was there to sign copies of Angelo, I think it was, right?
It was yeah, you were there.
And Jason's job at the time was to learn everything he could from me about signing books, so that when he no longer had to drag them up from the basement and put them on the table, he would be ready to go. And I think you'll find out he is actually really ready to go and has been for a long time. I've been sort of playing catch up and trying to sort of read a little bit here and there, and I've been aware of Jason's books and knowledgeable about a few of them, particularly Grand Canyon and more recently Watercress. Nothing like a Caldecott Medal on the front of a book to snag my attention. Nothing like a Caldecott Medal and a Newbery Honor Medal on the cover of the same book to tell me that they really did get it right. So usually those camps are quite separate, and you rarely see that crossover. Maybe Arnold Lobel was one of those people who, way back when, probably had an honor for both. I don't know. At the same time with the same book, but anyway, it's a very special thing. I'm very envious. So we're going to just talk. We're going to have a little conversation here. You're going to be listening in because it's so casual and this is such a comfortable place. I don't think either of us would mind if you wanted to ask a question at a particular time. You don't have to necessarily wait for the end for the so-called question and answer period. I think we can open this conversation up a little more informally. So my first thought was to ask Jason why hurricane, and I'll leave it at that to start with.
Yeah. Because my dinosaur book fell through. I didn't tell you the story earlier, but I had the idea for a dinosaur book, and then I saw Brian Floca, another artist that we both know, at an event, and I said, "Brian, what are you working on?" He said, "Dinosaur extinction." He said, "What are you working on, Jason?" I said, "Dinosaur extinction." And we were like, oh God. Can't both do it. Turns out he was a lot farther along on his book, so I talked to my editor and we said, okay, maybe we table that one a little bit. And then my editor said, well, what about a book about hurricanes? I said, yeah, that sounds really interesting. I hadn't been a weather geek, as they call us. I am a weather geek now. At that point, so it wasn't like my first love that I had to do a book about hurricanes. But I started doing research and learning more, and it just captured my imagination, and in particular, the weather forecasting, or the weather enterprise, as it's called, how the weather is forecasted, and all the different parts and people that are involved in making it possible to predict hurricanes and keep everyone safe. So that was my starting point for getting really into it. And of course, it's a very pertinent topic, an important topic, and I think good for kids to have a book about hurricanes to learn about them. You know, they can be scary, but if you learn about them, then maybe you're not so scared.
But you mean, it's an interesting point to bring up. I mean, let's face it, hurricanes can be terrifying, I would imagine, depending on the particular hurricane and the forces that we're talking about and so on and so forth. You did not create a terrifying book. You created a very reassuring approach to hurricane. And in fact, by you go through basically 2 weeks worth of the calendar, and we watched this thing from thunderstorms in the Atlantic reaching the level of a Category 3 hurricane, and then somehow the magic of cooler water, slows things down. So don't panic, kids. But the other thing you do is that you when you start to tell the story of the science of the hurricane. I mean, what is actually going on in the atmosphere? How are we learning about what's going on in real time in the atmosphere with various flights and satellite photography and so on and so forth? You also keep a very direct eye on those who are going to be affected by the hurricane, and one other little character. But you tell the story in a very kind of reassuring way, straightforward.
That was, well, there's a lot of thoughts come to mind, but that was one of the things I wanted to do. It's a disaster book, and I didn't want to kind of I didn't want to lean into just the disaster side of things and kind of take advantage, if you will, of these people's tragedy or this thing that's going to ruin their town potentially, and so it was a fine line to balance, like how much danger do we show without being over dramatic about it, and then how much do we pull back from that, because they are dangerous and we want to be realistic about that. You don't want to ignore that, but I also don't want to overemphasize. A lot of people in the book is set in Cape Hatteras. A lot of people there feel like, when the Weather Channel gets involved, they feel taken advantage of, right? They're being exploited, for ratings, whatever. So, and then a lot of that feeling came from actually going to Cape Hatteras and meeting people on the ground and seeing how they experience it and trying to tell the story through their eyes, at least that side of the story. Because there's 2 stories in the book. There's, well, maybe 3 narrative threads. There's the people in Hatteras, the family in Hatteras. There's the hurricane itself and that kind of narrative, forming and traveling. And then the forecasting weather enterprise that I mentioned before that is connecting the 2. The way that people know that the hurricane exists is through the National Weather Service and the Hurricane Center and everything they do.
Well, that may be over soon. So we won't have to worry about that.
Asterisk.
They'll just sneak up on us, these hurricanes.
That's right. As they used to.
As they used
As
to.
they used to, and used
Good
to
point.
do so much damage. And they don't anymore because of all the work of NOAA and the National Weather Service. And all the effort and technology and so forth. So
The reassurance of science
the reassurance of science.
in this particular case. Yeah, the three strands. I actually I went through the book, preparing myself for this. So this is my basically deconstructed plan of Jason's book. If you need this,
Okay.
let me know.
That's better notes than I have.
I'm welcome. Pass it on. But it's so easy just to sort of turn the pages and come away with an impression. But because I make books myself, I'm fascinated by the construction process.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, you decided that you were going to cut that hurricane off at a Category 3.
Yeah.
And talk about the wind field. Is it the wind field?
Wind field, yeah.
Do you know what a wind field is?
is?
I didn't know what a wind field was.
You could learn it, right?
It's right here. It's hidden in this book.
This
Wind
book.
field, not hidden. It's right there.
Yeah. It's the radius of hurricane force winds. Because the hurricane's huge, but the strongest winds are in the center. So then there's a radius of hurricane force winds, and then a radius of tropical storm force winds. And then, so that's what the wind field is.
So even if the hurricane is veering away or slowing down or whatever, the
Yeah.
wind field is the thing that will still get you.
Exactly.
Potentially.
Right, potentially. Right.
Potentially.
And as hurricanes hit cooler water, they actually do tend to grow larger, even as their winds slow down or become less strong. So it's maybe a smaller, less devastating impact, potentially, and larger area of impact. But every storm is different. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the storm in my book is a fictional storm, in part because I had to construct a book and needed to be able to make things happen where it was appropriate in the storyline, not the way it happened when Hurricane Dorian came along. And I needed to be able to be not tied to what actually happened in a specific hurricane.
Did you ever have the desire to name it, even though it was a fictional storm? I mean, you did explain why you didn't name it.
Yes.
But I wondered, what would you have called it?
Some names come to mind that I won't mention. I don't know what I would call it.
I wondered.
So the thought crossed my mind, but there is a whole process for naming storms that's done very intentionally. The Weather Service in the World Meteorological Organization, has a list of names, and it's established, in the past, and it's a rotating list of names. I think there's 6 years worth of names, I think. And those names stay the same until there's a really terrible storm, and then that name comes off the list permanently. So there'll never be another Hurricane Katrina. They replace it with another K name. The names alternate male and female, and it's intentionally done so that when done that way, so that when a hurricane comes, like for example, there was a Hurricane Hillary around the time Hillary Clinton was either running for president or was in office as Secretary of State, something like that. And so no one can say, well, you chose to name it Hurricane Hillary out of spite or whatever. But there's this whole process to make it
That's interesting.
kind of fair and even and handed.
And also, it occurs to me, because you do locate it in a real place,
Yeah.
you'd have to get them to vote on
Yeah,
the
that's
name,
right.
that might be
Right.
that might be
Yeah,
a really hard
it would
sell.
mix it up, right? Because there'd be like, or even just kids in Hatteras reading it and saying, you know, let's say I'd named it Hurricane Joe. Well, were you here when Hurricane Joe came? And then they have to explain, well, no, it wasn't real.
Yeah,
So
good point.
there's some angles on it.
It's more trouble than it's worth.
Yeah,
But,
right.
so okay, so what did I learn from these things? I just thought you should know a few things about the contents in a way of the book, but not the literal contents, or maybe it is the literal as opposed to the sort of artistic content. If you purchase this book, you're getting 48 pages at a bargain price. With that, you get 6 double-page spreads. That is to say, a single image spreading over 2 pages. 6 double-page spreads. That does not include the jacket art, and it does not include the cover, the boards. There's a second double-page spread that's wrapped around the cardboard inside and underneath.
Do we show them?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. There's the jacket.
Yep. There's the jacket with the family evacuating. And when I was told to do the jacket, they said, well, we need to show the family. And I said, okay, but that's not going to be very dramatic because they evacuate before the hurricane comes. And they said, but you need to show it dramatic. Can you show the hurricane too? I said, no, they leave before the hurricane. Well, can you show the waves on the beach? I was like, okay. A lot of work to find the right spot. But then my editor came up with the idea of showing the hurricane underneath.
So who would know? You know,
It's a little.
we all do eventually take the jackets off to see what's underneath, but usually you just get a reproduction of the jacket art on the boards, or you get, in the old days, cloth and maybe a blind stamp if you're lucky.
Right.
So there's that. Okay, 5 maps so that you can, 6 double-page spreads, 5 maps, 2 diagrams, not including the diagrams in the back matter, which is 4 pages. So whatever information is not given to you through the story and the different devices for telling the story, it's all there at the end. So more details and so on and so forth to pull it all together. So incredibly helpful in that regard. And 10 cats.
Yeah.
So.
And the cat lives.
And the
And the cat lived,
Yay.
and that's one of those things about it that is so clever. You know, nobody gets overly excited about the cat. You introduce the fact that there's this stray cat. The kids, there's a hurricane coming, but the kids are so pleased, at least one of them, that they've just discovered this stray cat. It's also low key, and yet there I am, you know, one of the grown-up readers here, looking for the cat. Now on this page, under the porch, climbing up the stairs, slightly obscured, but nevertheless there. This kind of reassuring presence. This thing has not been washed out to sea, and then of course everybody comes back at the end. It's this really nice kind of feel to it. How many cats lost their lives during that same storm?
No cats were
Yeah.
in the making of this book.
We will never know. But anyway, the thing is, not to and one other thing that I wanted to comment on, point out, that struck me is that you do something that I would never do. It would never occur to me to do it because I don't know why. I was trying to think why I didn't do this, but you do. Let me find a. Well, this is a good example. This happens more times than not. You've got 2 single-paged illustrations bumping right up against each other. There's no border around one of them to separate it, and yet they are quite different. And this is true. And I don't know how many of those. There are many of these double-page groupings. Now I have a theory about why this works as well as it does, and maybe it was in Watercress.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of that, but the distinctions are so subtle between the 2 pages. This is subtle. There's another one. In the sky, on the ground. They bump into each other in the gutter of the book. That's a bold decision. Do you
Yeah.
want to make a comment
Yeah.
before I give you my theory?
So I work hard to make sure that they're really separate, distinct. And actually, this is my editor and art director are very. They have an eye for that and saying make sure it looks like two separate images, and you got to make sure of that. Yeah, but in the past, I've actually put a white line around some of them, and they actually prefer that not to have the white line. They want it to go full.
How do you feel?
Depends on the instance, but I like them to go full bleed. It just I have to, as the illustrator, be really conscious of the fact that they're going to bump up against each other and have to be very clearly two separate images. So with the plane and the forecasters, outside, inside, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
But with map ones, well, the forecast map on the left, the
Left,
aerial
yeah.
view of the hurricane,
Yeah.
and the images of the family in Hatteras. One of the keys was actually to do two slightly different styles of artwork. So I'll just point it out here. So the way the book proceeds through much of it is that you see the aerial view with the forecast laid on top, and the aerial view here is painted without lines, but then you get lines in the forecast map. And these illustrations are done in pen and ink with a line and watercolor with lines. So it wouldn't, without this forecast map on top, I think it would look like two different books. But that's what kind of ties it together, makes it work to me. And but by being not lines around the hurricane and the clouds, it keeps it separate so that you know it's two different things. It was a tricky one to figure out.
This is what makes a terrific book, is when you know that everything's been thought through. There's no sort of coincidence here. So, which is why I started to question it, because my old school ways would have had me draw the white line around at least one of the pages,
Yeah.
just to break that connection. Even though the information is clearly linked, in many cases you might get a detail inside a framed or bordered page that belongs to the larger image on the left-hand side, which bleeds all the way around. But the thing I thought was so effective about it is that there's, like a hurricane, when you're under a hurricane, there's no way out.
Yep.
You are under this cloud, basically this cloud mass, and there's a kind of weight over you. So for me, these pages, when they're bunched up like that, when they're doubled like that, they have this kind of weight to them, which makes you feel like there's no breathing room here. You're not there's breathing room in a way in that distinctions are made between what happens on those pages, but it's not an obvious breathing room like a white line. But what that does is that it brings you to this moment in the story. If I can find it quickly, as we get down towards the. Okay, here we go. Now, there are two pages. They're not exactly the same, but more or less the same values, the same hues, and so on and so forth in those two pages. But it's still part of this gray, brutal, unavoidable force over our heads, surrounding us. But what this does is it makes the next spread, the eye of the storm, even more exciting and a relief. Oh, thank God! The eye of the storm. But wait, it's false. It's fake. Don't think you're out of the woods yet. But nevertheless, we don't know that. So that transition from that double page spread, and we go right back into another double page, not double page, but twin singles that are bumped up against each other. We're back under the clouds again. But there was this one moment, this blue and this light, suddenly there's light, there's shadow on the buildings again. You know, there's a sign of hope in this illustration. That's just really brilliant bookmaking. It's brilliant design. It's beautiful execution, and the flow. You know, the flow is, I think. I mean, that's what makes this a special book. It's you know. So what? Did you have a sense of that when you were the weight of it and the?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I like hearing you describe it that way because I was thinking about other things which led to the same result, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking about all of the books I had read and people I had talked to about experiencing hurricanes. So reading books about Katrina and the Galveston hurricane in 1900, and Dorian was a big one that hit Hatteras, and then talking to people in Hatteras about living through hurricanes, and they all described this like this building tension, you know, of it's like a slow moving doom or something. Not quite. Doom might be overstating it because they also, like I said, they don't want to over dramatize the experience. But the weight. I think,
weight.
you know, I wouldn't have used that word, but I think that's right. So that I was thinking about them and how they described it, and then in terms of that narrative shift to the eye of the storm, it kind of writes itself, right?
Yeah.
Like this is what happens in
Yeah.
the hurricane. So
Yeah.
I'm lucky in that respect. I didn't have to invent like a narrative shift. But yes, I was conscious of keeping the images, like it goes 3 small images, 1 full page image, and then 1 double spread to like to lead into that as you know, that to convey the narrative in that design way, in the way of designing it. So
Just-
on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff that gets thought about as
Yeah.
one is planning these books, and you don't. It's not like it all just comes to you at once.
Yeah.
What's
It's
that
piecemeal,
process
right?
like?
Like-
Yeah,
I don't know. Is it that way for you?
it is absolutely that way for me. Chaotic.
Right. It's chaotic. It's a storm. I could probably look at each page and say I had that idea at some point. I had that idea at some point. I can't remember which point, but it was not all at the same. It was over the year of making the book, or the year and a half of making the book, that these ideas like pop up, and I had 100 other ideas that didn't make it into the book. They go through the filter, I guess, of the creative process, and you end up piecing together. For me, it's like this book was just piecing together all these ideas into something that made narrative sense.
Do you pin them on the wall at some point? Do you to
I
be able to
do,
move
but I
things
don't have a
around?
wall as big as yours.
Have a big wall.
I'm jealous of your bulletin board wall.
Well, I'm older. I get a bigger wall.
You get a bigger wall. I have a couple of bulletin boards that I use and pin stuff up and well, I mentioned this earlier. For this book, I went back to making handmade dummies, book dummy. You know what a book dummy is? It's like a mock-up of the book with sketches and writing in it that were cut and paste, like actually cutting up words I'd printed out, cutting up drawings I'd done, and pasting them together, and moving around using Post-it notes and stuff. That really helped, which I'd kind of, the previous books gotten out of the practice of doing it that way. But it was really necessary for this one because there's a lot of detailed parts moving around, to fit together.
This was. How does it compare to Grand Canyon, for instance? Was that another of those?
Yes, yeah. There's a definite
Yeah.
connection between
There's a complexity
the books.
to
There's a
both
complexity
of
to
these.
the books. Yeah. It kind of born of the sense like I have one chance to do a book about a hurricane or the Grand Canyon, and I have this mountain of things, of information that I've learned and that I feel needs to be conveyed. And I could have done a book, at one point we talked about doing a book just about the hurricane hunters, which, if you don't know about that, those are the weather forecasting teams that fly into the eye of the hurricane to gather data. But then that would have left out the people in Hatteras. Or I could have done it just about the hurricane and the people, but then that would have left out the satellite images. Anyways, there's all this information I felt had to be in there. It was the same thing with the Grand Canyon. And it became, the big wall of, well, in my case, a small bulletin board, but with a lot of
don't feel badly about it. I mean,
with a lot of pieces on it, try to pin them up and figure out where they go. But that's the fun part. I don't know, is that the fun part for you?
That is
the fun part.
That is the fun part, and frustrating, and so on and so forth. For years, I considered one of the most important pieces of equipment in the studio was the photocopier. I wasn't using the computer at all. This is before the computer was even available to me. But the copy machine, where I could blow things up and reduce things, and very quickly play with scale. And then you start to pin them up on the wall, not necessarily in an order that makes sense, but you put enough stuff up there, and after a while you realize that if you could okay, I'll take this one over here and put it next to this one, and then maybe even tape them together and fold them. And then I'll find another piece floating around, and I would gradually and slowly build a sequence of images that became a sequence of pages. But it was somewhere in the book. It wasn't the beginning and middle, it was just somewhere in the book. And so these things have a way of revealing themselves to you, and sort of shouting out, "This is where I belong." Or this is completely wrong, and so that structural, that building process is really one of the most enjoyable parts of this whole process. Doing research is one of those other great moments in this whole process. The other is putting all the pieces together, and then the last one, of course, is when you hold the book. But there's a huge amount of space between putting those pieces together for the first time and holding the book. That's the part that will kill you.
It's a marathon.
If you lose your sense of humor or whatever, or just, and at times it's truly frustrating. But go back to the research. How did you connect with the people of Hatteras?
So when the book was first being conceived, I was talking about it with my editor. We thought about doing, like I said, a book about the hurricane hunters specifically, or doing a book about a historical hurricane, like a specific event, and finding a story within that event to tell. But I mentioned it to my neighbor, Anne, friend and neighbor, Anne, who said to me, "Oh, you're doing a book about hurricanes, you got to go to Hatteras." I said, "Tell me about Hatteras." She used to live there, and she was a teacher there. She was very familiar with the community, and put me in touch with someone there. And we had a phone call, and they described. I said, "How do you prepare for hurricanes?" Just trying to learn a little bit about that, but also about the community. And it just made sense to do it about a small community. And Hatteras happens to be one of the most hurricane-prone places in the United States. They, on average, are impacted by a hurricane every 3 years or so. And so they know a lot. They have a lot of direct personal experience. It was also a small community, which appealed to me because I felt like if I'm going to describe how a community prepares, it would be a lot easier to do a small town rather than Miami, right? Because there's all these complexities for the big city. And it has a unique character, I found out when I went there. I told them, after the conversation, got back in touch, said, "I think I'm going to come down and visit. I'm going to come in September, and they paused for a second and said, you know, that's the middle of hurricane season. I said, well, this is the weekend I can come that, you know, that I could fit it in. So I booked my flights. I said, okay, cross your fingers. But and then sure enough, a tropical storm spun up 2 days before I was supposed to go there. And it was scheduled, it was forecast to hit Hatteras the day I was within 3 hours of me landing. So I said, I'll delay my flight. It never reached hurricane status. It was just a few mile per hour short of hurricane status, but it did some damage there. And then I went, and that was my introduction, and it's a fascinating community. I'm wearing the Cape Hatteras Hurricanes T-shirt. That's the name of their high school mascot of the Hurricanes. The elementary school mascot is the Tropical Storms.
Cute.
And so I went there to show them the book.
Show them the book in process?
Person.
I
went.
It was done.
So I went first, for a initial get to know the town, meet some people, talk to people, and that trip cemented the idea this is going to be set in Hatteras for sure. And then I went back a little bit, a few months later in mid-process to get more reference photos and ask some more questions. So all the places depicted here are real places in Hatteras. I had to go back because there's a scene where they pull the small boats out of the water, and I didn't know where that was, so I had to go back and say, where do you pull your small boats out of the water? They said, oh, drive past the fire station on the right. That's where everybody does it. And then I said, where's the high ground? If you have ever been to Hatteras, there's no high ground. So high ground is 10 feet above sea level or something. But they said, actually the fire station parking lot, so I had to go get an image of the fire department parking lot. And they were just a wonderful, welcoming community, and they, almost to a T, every single person that I asked about hurricane preparation said the most important thing is help your neighbors. And I mean, they wrote me also, don't forget the most important thing is help your neighbors. And so that became the theme of the book, and kind of the heart, to me, that's the heart of the book, is community, helping your neighbors, and then this wider community of the weather forecasters that have to all work together with all the way down the chain from the global weather community all the way down through governments, local governments, emergency managers, local volunteer efforts, to the families helping each other. Doesn't work, that's the message of the book, to me, kind of the heart of it.
So if you were looking for ways of guaranteeing that a community would pull together, you need to invite a disaster.
A disaster.
Or at least the threat of a disaster,
The threat of a
on a
disaster.
3-year basis.
Yeah.
And that'll bomb them.
They'll bond
if
them.
nothing else will.
Well, anyone that is not bonded leaves.
They
They
leave
get
that
out.
one time, don't come back, right? Just
It's an interesting. It's something I thought about when I was writing the book. I was like, people in places where there are a lot of snowstorms seem to have a strong community just around that experience of the power goes out regularly, or we're stuck in we can't get to work for a few days or whatever. A similar, I don't know, it breeds a similar sense of community, I think.
Yeah.
The weather does.
Yeah. Did you? Well, maybe that's nature's job, is to every once in a while, whether we
Let
deserve it or not, force us to coexist.
Coexist, yeah.
And realize that we depend on each other. Did you talk to any of the younger members of the Hatteras community?
Yeah. So I visited the school and did an author presentation and talked to kids there. And that was, a little more of a typical school visit where we talk about books and writing and art and drawing. Got a little bit of a sense of of their perspective. But the teacher actually really helped me on that front, because they asked the students on my behalf about hurricanes. And so there was a hurricane that hit Florida called Idalia that same year, so 2023. And it hit Florida the first week of school. And all the kids in Hatteras were scared that Idalia was coming for them, because sometimes that happens. Sometimes hurricanes will cross Florida, come out, hit Florida, come up, go over the peninsula, come out on the coast of Georgia, and then head up to Hatteras. That does happen. And she was surprised about how how aware they were of Idalia, which was, again, headed for Florida, not headed towards them. But how little they talked about it, right? She brought it up, and all of a sudden the class wanted to talk all about it, and all about hurricanes, and expressed their fear of the storm. So that was really interesting to hear. And it kind of, going there, this is one of the reasons I go to the places. It made me much more invested in the book, to know, like, okay, people that live there are going to read this, and I better be able to show it to them and have them say, yes, this feels authentic, this feels true to my experiences.
Yeah, I don't know how you could write a book that works this well without being there, without having spent some time. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but you have to remember what it sort of smelled like when the winds are kicking up or whatever, just the ocean.
Sand blowing off the dunes, getting in my shoes.
Yeah.
Like, these tactile experiences are so important.
Yeah, I've always found that from the beginning, that whatever you're writing about, whatever I'm illustrating about, I need to have been to see the research, basically, the objects, the subject matter, in person, because it will affect the way I draw things, and the way I will handle the light, for instance, in some cases on a structure, or you can make it up to a certain point. And I think as an illustrator, there are times when you do have to make stuff up to fill the gaps and that sort of thing. But the more time you have spent either on location, which is number one, the best way, but also just watching videos, is tremendous. Can be tremendously helpful too. You just see these things, as opposed to looking at static images, as we would have until relatively recently. Just looked at photographs or engravings or something like that, and in a written word, and tried to breathe life into it. You need a little more help than that. And now it's so easy for us to do that, to get down there, with or without a storm about to hit, or to sort of just watch endless video. Since everybody takes video, there's no shortage.
There's no shortage of crazy people that seek out hurricanes so they can get video.
Or tornadoes.
Right.
So right.
Which.
Yeah.
I don't advise, I don't condone, but I was grateful for their video.
No. So it just, as I say, it breathes a life into this collection of pages, into this collection of images, which, could be just static, could feel more like blueprints, diagrams, and so on. But when you can mix up the diagrams and the blueprints, when it's important that kind of information be presented with the larger story, with the what it feels like to be a human in that situation at that time, then the book benefits from it, and I think in that sense the reader benefits from it too. You remember it.
Yeah, it goes to what you're saying about drawing and using it as a way to look and to learn, right? Drawing to learn rather than just trying to make a picture.
Well, we were talking about this earlier. One of the things that unites us in a sense is that we are both curious. And I think part of our goal is to not provide all the answers to young readers, but to encourage the asking of questions. You tell a story and you choose a certain number of questions to present a certain amount of information, but then it's not like, okay, put the book away, back on the shelf, and go on to something else. It's, if you've done your job, it doesn't leave here. Some of the things that they've been introduced to, some of the things they've seen, some of the situations they saw people in the story dealing with, stay with them. And those human connections are really important. So going down and talking to people and meeting the survivors and so on and so forth.
And the cats.
And the cat.
I met the cats.
The cat. You got 10 cats. Did I mention there were 10 cats? Yes.
I met a lot of cats down there. Heard a lot of stories about people. They're all stray feral cats that live on the island. And people take care of the cats that live around their property, but they are outdoor cats.
That's interesting.
Come in, and it's just kind of one of the quirky, I don't know if quirky is the right word, but it's one of the maybe unique aspects of it's kind of like Rome, actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if we were talking about Rome earlier.
Talk about cats.
But yeah, so a lot of, it's a common experience to leave and then come back and hope your cat
Yeah.
is still there, and I think most of the time they survive and do okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're not likely to do stupid things.
Right.
You know,
Go find your
they're too
video.
smart for that. They'll find a place.
They'll find a place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all those human touches
Yeah.
are what make reading a book like Hurricane, like the human perception in Grand Canyon, of course in Watercress.
Watercress. Yeah.
You know, very human,
Yeah.
incredibly powerful in a way, but
that was all Andrea.
yeah, but that's but again, our job as
Our
illustrators
job,
is to bring that, is to present it in another form, in
Right.
another way, because not everybody who's going to be turning those pages or given the opportunity to turn the pages will necessarily read, at least not at that level.
Yeah.
They will be read to, perhaps,
Yeah.
but that's what makes our job as much fun as it is, because you do feel like you're reaching this younger audience with stuff that they can get. And they won't necessarily see it all the first time, but they'll see it all more quickly than their older readers will, who are accompanying them, and they'll notice and not forget those things. So they're connecting with the story through the visual images and through the devices and the things that have been included. As they become increasingly aware of that aspect of the story that is dependent upon the words.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I learned from the master,
Who was learning
Yes.
himself
Yeah.
the whole time.
But I mean, the human aspect. I told you this earlier, but the human aspect and the humor, which is a very human thing in the way things were with the mammoths, was what made it connect to it. What made it not a book where I learned about machines or things, but made it a book that I wanted to keep opening again and again. And of course, spending time with it is something is what makes it stick in your mind, right? Or the drawings in the Cathedral of Castle, the architectural drawings that were obvious, like drawn by a human being, not blueprints, that made me want to go back to them. And so everything you were talking about it resonates so much because that's what I got from your books.
That's why we do what we do.
And it's, I've always thought that's what I want to give that experience to people who read, kids who read my books.
To shift the spotlight just for a very brief second, the mammoths were not a corporate decision. There was not a committee that was brought together and interviewed about what animal they thought would be the best. The mammoth was an act of desperation on my part after a year and a half of trying to figure out how to make simple machines and larger collections of simple machines into more complicated things. Fun.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form, because I just couldn't stand it anymore. And as I was explaining simple machines, literally one day, I've got a bunch of cave people, because I'm thinking levers, the fulcrum, the whole thing. That's old stuff, been around forever. Probably cave people use these devices to move rocks and logs and mammoths that were in the way. But it was these guys working with the rocks and the logs, and in a cave dwelling setting with no caves, just the cave dwellers, and surrounding trees, a couple of mammoths in the trees watching what these people are doing, and gradually it occurred to me, all in one afternoon, or not gradually, very quickly it occurred to me that they could interact with the mammoth and actually move the mammoth. Or lift the mammoth using these simple devices. And I suddenly realized that's the way into this. So it wasn't a master plan, it was literally an act of desperation. But it's the thing that readers, especially younger readers, they keep coming back. But I've got now really older readers who still come back for the mammoths. So and every time I'm asked to draw one, I have to look it up again and remember, okay, how do the legs bend and so on and so forth to get it right. But nevertheless,
It's so often the way art, the good ideas happen, right?
Yeah.
An act of desperation, or it's not. If it's planned, it's probably not going to be your best idea.
probably
But
not,
the original idea that really
Yeah.
lands well. It's like those ones that just come to you.
They come to you, and thank goodness.
Yeah.
But also, I think after a while, after doing a number of books, you are confident that it will work out. You will get
Right,
there.
right.
But you have to stick with it, because if you walk away too soon, just give up, and I've done that too.
Yeah.
So
Right, that persistence, and the big aha moments or insights often come after sticking with it for how long do you say, a year and a half of trying to make this thing.
trying to make it look interesting, be
And
interesting.
then it feels sudden, but it's not actually sudden. It was a year and a half of work
Yeah.
that went to that.
Because the thing is, we care about what we're tackling.
Right.
We learn to care about it, whether it's an editorial suggestion or a conversation over lunch or whatever it is. But it's something that if it sinks its hook into you a little bit,
Yeah.
then you find the energy
Yeah.
to pursue it. And
I'm a full-on weather geek now.
I think you can be treated for that.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, now.
But
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe doing a book about,
Right.
what did you say, forest fire?
Forest fires, right. And other fun topics.
Oh, another fun
Right,
topic,
yeah.
become a forest fire geek.
All right,
Yeah.
so do you guys have any questions or anything that's popped up?
Sure. This is more on the production side, but from either you or your editor or both of you saying, let's make a book about X, what's the average time period until you have the book in your hand?
For me, it's typically a year and a half to submission, and then another year-ish till the book is on for sale. Yeah, so 2.5 years. Yeah. It's they rushed the production of this one. I don't know all the details, but it came out faster than I expected. But really wanted to get it published before hurricane season because it would be really hard to promote a book after a hurricane just hit. Be really kind of not a good look to be like.
Yeah, bad memories, really. Yeah. Yeah.
So no, but it was important just to have it done at a certain time.
What is the longest book you've?
Grand Canyon Yeah, that was the longest one. About 3 years to figure that one out. And I did. It was like a kind of a start and stop, so I did some other stuff mixed in there. I started with one idea and then discovered that the science was changing. It didn't support that idea anymore. So it was a question of the age of Grand Canyon. For a long time, the scientists were confident in the age of the canyon, but then new evidence in another part of the canyon showed a very different age. So my story had to change a lot.
Yeah, that's alarming. That's alarming. That's.
It's,
I mean, thanks to social media, it seems to me like those dates change every 3 weeks
yeah.
these days.
You
New
can find any
discovery.
date you want on
Yeah.
social media.
There you go. So my longest was about 5 years.
5 years.
5
Which book
years.
was that?
The body book. The way we were.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, how did you conceive of that? Was it
I just thought I need to do. I need
it's
to-
connected to the way things were.
Yeah, and it was it was going to be the next logical sort of volume, and
Yeah.
but I knew so little, and I had to learn so much,
Right.
and I didn't know what the book should be like. Is it going to be traditionally structured, systems and that sort of thing? So yeah, it was a good 5 years, more than that.
Wow. Yeah.
And after a while,
That's
you really think,
dedication.
is this worth it? Is this really? The first books were done, and each book was a book a year for the first 6 years. So, and that was, I thought that's what it's going to be like. And then I got more ambitious, which was really stupid.
Yeah. A book a year it's grueling.
It's absurd.
It's grueling. Yeah.
It's absurd.
Yeah. Because you need time to think of the next book. Like,
Right.
I remember I handed in my first book. It was like I was exhausted. I was like, I got it on time. Staying up late for months, and on the day I handed it in, they looked at all the art, said, "Give me a thumbs up," said it looks good. And my editor said, "Well, what do you want to do next?" And I was like,
Yeah,
I don't know. I haven't thought about anything but this.
That's what my editor said. So what's next? Well, we just finished it.
Yeah. There's more. You want more? So I said that was Redwoods, and then I said Coral Reefs. And I had thought of it before, but I hadn't thought a lot about it. And then that became the next book.
What's next? I mean, from you.
So
Just
I
from
do
you.
know what's next now, because we've switched, instead of me writing this book and then writing another book and writing another book, I write an illustrated book and then illustrated book by another author. So alternate, and then that gives me kind of space during that year to think about what I'd like to write about next. It works out well for me. So the next book will be another book written by Andrea Wang, who wrote Watercress. So we're going to do another collaboration, which will be nice. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Tough act to follow.
Yeah, there is that date that I'm going to have those medals hang over my head.
Yeah.
But I'll turn the cover of Watercress around
That's right.
and not look at it.
You just try to make the best book you can, as we all do each
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
and it invariably will work.
Yeah, you just like words are a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
So you kind of separate that from the actual work, and which is the real thing.
What do you think?
I think we just hit a little bit past 3, so unless anyone else has a burning question that they must have answered right this moment, we're going to have some books up front to be sold, and then sign if you're willing to sign. And thank you all so much for coming. This has been so fantastic.